Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me live today. I'm Karen Kennedy with Real Food Matters, and I want to extend a big welcome and thank you for Bob and Ruth for joining me today. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm especially excited that they've agreed to join me today because Ruth and Bob took part in my Hack Your Blood Sugar Using a CGM program back in April. And I feel like they've had such an interesting journey with using it. They both have really separate success stories. And I wanted to have them on because I thought that they really made the most out of this technology and this program to improve their health and improve their lives. And I wanted them to tell their stories because I thought it would both be informative and really inspiring to some other people. So I guess, Ruth, do you want to start and tell me a little bit about where you were when you started this and why you wanted to even do the CGM program with me?
Sure. So I had had a conversation with you that was driven by a raffle prize that I won when we were at a mom-owned business event.
Right.
Together.
So we should say, so I forgot, Ruth and I know each other through the mom-owned business networking group. So yeah, and then I had raffled off one of my services.
And I had met her a couple of times in groups and found her to be delightful, and then realized that she's a functional nutritionist. And I have a family history of high cholesterol, and I had always kind of struggled with the high cholesterol, all of that, and thought that perhaps it might be a good time to check those numbers out. I turned 60 last fall and wanted to start kind of getting my ducks in a row. And so you had the buy one, get one program going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of being a little manipulative. I said to my husband, I'd like to take this class. I want to see what my body chemistry is doing. And it's a buy one, get one free. And I would want you to be my partner. And so he said that he would. I was really curious what his numbers looked like because he is type 2 diabetes and is on meds, and his A1C was, okay-ish. I don't know what my A1C was at that time because I had never had a blood sugar issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'd never offered to do one because I was always well within range. And so that's what prompted me to want to join. And then shortly after we started, right before we started, so in January, I had my lipids drawn, and my cholesterol was understandably high because we have a family history of that. And but my triglycerides were 321. And when you and I spoke about that, you were like, oh, that's a blood sugar thing. We can probably move that number some. And so I was really curious to see how that was going to happen. So that was really the impetus for me, was twofold. One, I wanted to take a look at whether or not I could get my triglycerides down. And then also I kind of wanted to know what was going on with Bob's blood sugar chemistry.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's interesting. So, and I remember also at the time we talked about some cooking, and you were starting to cook more and change some of your cooking. And you guys started doing a little more exercise too, didn't you?
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Bob had knee replacement surgery at the end of December last year. Mm-hmm. And I had taken a fall and done some traumatic injury to my hip. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, no break. But our physical therapist said, the two of you, it'd be really good for you guys to do some work in the pool. And so we contacted our local pool and figured out that we could go water walking 3 times a week, and it would fit into our schedule. And so we started with the intention of just rehabbing the injuries, and now we're at the pool 3 times a week, and we're walking some more. But that's part of the story of what changed with the tactics that you helped us discover.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, and the water walking is like regular walking, dragging a 40-pound sled.
Wet.
Wet.
All right. So you guys were you were changing a number of things. A lot of stuff was in the works while you were doing this. Do you want to just look at some of your data? Should we look at some of your data from the beginning? All right, let's look at Ruth so we can talk about this a little bit. I'll do a screen share because I know that some of the people kind of want to know what this looks like. And I know for the providers who are out there, I know it can be helpful, though. What we're looking at right here is the free software using the Freestyle Libre. So when we're talking about a CGM, we're talking about a continuous glucose monitor, and we're using the Freestyle Libre products. And this is off of LibreView, more free software that we use and that they can share their data through. And so this is where Ruth started. So you can see, if you're not used to looking at these graphs, this is 24 hours starting at 12 a.m. and 12 to 12 a.m. the next day. So this is Saturday and Sunday. And we're looking at her blood sugar levels, her glucose levels. This little bar, this gray bar, is what we call the Goldilocks zone, because we want blood sugar to stay in a Goldilocks zone, really a steady blood sugar. And the flatter, the better, really. So this is where Ruth started off. And you can see that she started off kind of, overnight. She was nice and low. We always call it, we want to be bottom feeding all night long. And you can see that she's low all night long. And when she eats, her blood sugar goes up, yet not crazy high. And then it comes down. So what were you thinking when you saw this, when we first started off?
So, I'm kind of a numbers nerd. And so the bottoming out kind of scared me a little bit. And I thought, no, I should be like right at 100 all the time. And then, realized that that's not really very reasonable. And I was happy to see that I could stay in the zone and that the spikes were predictable.
Yeah.
And things that I thought that I was eating that were like good for me were driving numbers that I didn't like.
That's interesting. Like, what things did you think were good for you that were driving your numbers a little high?
So one of the things that I thought was good for me was Carnation Instant Breakfast, because it's got 9 grams of protein in it.
Right. See if we can find that.
That would send me right over the top. And
I'm looking to see if I can find that one of those.
Yeah, there you go. You had it
before.
There
it is.
Right there.
Oh yeah, there it is. So Carnation Instant Breakfast right here.
Yeah. So it was like, oh, shoot. I was having this because I thought it was a high protein, breakfast. And I was like, instant breakfast. I was ready to go. And that was not it. The other thing is fruit snacks. Fruit snacks that are 100% fruit juice. That one up over 200.
Okay.
And I'm not even sure I did a notation on that because I was kind of embarrassed because I did it more than once. And I think that's the thing that I came away with the most with this was I now know when I'm choosing something that's not necessarily good for me.
Right.
And so I can have that little quick conversation with myself about, is this just to make my mouth happy? Or is this, and sometimes it is, sometimes it's just, I want that.
Right. And I love your language. I have adopted so much of your language. Is this just to make my mouth happy? Is my mouth just lonely?
Yeah. So, and sometimes it is, but more often it's not.
So what I want to point out here for people who are watching, especially providers, is that normally the standard range is usually set from 70 to 180. And if that was set, she would be 100% in range here, because even this spike with instant breakfast takes her to 173. And she was coming back down, like she was having this would be considered a normal glucose spike and coming back down to baseline. And so when I see this, I see someone who has a healthy metabolism. You are able to tolerate that instant breakfast and bring your blood sugar back down. And then do it, you jumped up to 145 later on here, and you did that throughout the day generally. But what we noticed, but at the time you were having like high triglycerides, and you still made improvements, because a lot of times you might see this and go, actually, I don't think blood sugar is really an issue for you. It might not be an issue for you. But it ended up being an issue, because what did you end up doing with this information? Like, how did you start changing things?
Well, can I give away one of the hacks?
Yes, all the hacks.
So one of the hacks that you had shared with us was, if you're having like a steak, potato, and salad, is to go ahead and eat that protein first. And we really implemented the protein first at meals. And that seemed to help. We changed some of the ways that we were cooking. I started to learn to cook. The walks after dinner, that helped also.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to tell you that my labs in January for my triglycerides were 321. And in May, the beginning of May, when I had them checked again, they were 165.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you halved your triglycerides.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So you had high triglycerides, and we knew that, like we talked about that being like, yeah, that sounds like a blood sugar issue, because high triglycerides are usually a reflective of blood sugar dysregulation. We can see that your blood sugar, now granted, as soon as you start paying attention to your blood sugar, you're automatically going to start reining it in a little bit. But we saw that your blood sugar isn't conventionally, bad. It really wasn't a train wreck at all. But even the little bit of improvement that you made by using the hacks like the protein and extra, just those little things, that made a massive difference in your triglycerides.
It did. And the other thing that I noticed was I am in remission for Lyme disease. And one of my symptoms is like inflammation. I ache very easily. And I started paying attention to foods that drove the ache. And foods that drove the ache affected my blood sugar.
Oh.
So.
Yep. And I found the same thing.
You found the same thing. So pain, it was inflammation and pain were directly tied to that.
Yeah, it was really actually kind of breathtaking for me to realize that bread made me hurt.
Okay. That's bread made you hurt. That's interesting, because you always, so are you on a gluten-free diet? So it wasn't necessarily gluten. It was just that high glycemic.
And we didn't go gluten-free.
Okay.
It wasn't like we looked at that and went, oh gosh, now we have to make this huge change to our diet and to our kitchen and the way we cook. It was just sort of like, oh, I'm going to have a tuna sandwich and use one piece of bread. So make a half a sandwich with what I would normally put in a full sandwich for the tuna,
right?
But only have half the bread.
Right. So they're pretty modest tweaks. They were just little kind of minor shifts in what you were doing.
Yeah, super doable.
Okay. I'm going to, I'd like to screen share again. And I just want to bring up, what it looked like just on what I was showing before were Ruth's numbers during the first week, right when she first started looking at them. And this is towards the end, like during week 3 or week 4. So it's just a few weeks later, but these are the numbers that Ruth was showing. So, still, low all night, which is great. And they're really actually kind of small differences, instead of going up to 175, here, look, you had the instant breakfast here, but you had a hard-boiled egg first.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought it down from like a 175 reading to a 137 reading. That's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big difference for eating pretty much the same food in a different order.
Right. Because I probably would have had the hard-boiled egg later in the morning, like real quick, get that instant breakfast going because I got stuff to do. And then, I'm getting kind of hangry, so I'm going to have a hard-boiled egg. So I would have done that completely different, completely backwards.
Yeah. And then here's this one. This one, you just had a hard-boiled egg. And you can see you're getting, things are just flatter. You're flattening. We all know what flattening the curve looks like now. Flattening the curve. So these are just, you're still, your blood sugar's going up and down with what you eat. Look, 14 Hershey's Kisses, pot roast potatoes, cooked carrots. So this isn't, like you're saying, you're not following a really pristine diet. You're still having parties with your mouth is still having parties and, but.
And on that particular day, I remember that day with the 14 chocolate kisses because I really expected it to go way higher. And so it was sort of like this little gift to myself. Then it was like, I could do this if I needed to do it again without crashing my whole chemistry.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And then you also said something. Let's stop share here. You said something when I brought up hot flashes and this.
So I realized a couple of weeks ago that I haven't had a hot flash since we started monitoring our glucose. So, how is that related to the triglyceride numbers, the blood sugar numbers? I don't really care. I just I'm just really grateful that I'm not, doing this as much. I really don't know that I've had even one.
And I'm grateful that she's not having them.
Because it's stress. Because we know that it's stress reduction, hot flashes, menopause symptoms, it's all stress. And the extreme blood sugar variations, that's stress to the body.
So it's interesting that you brought that up because we had talked earlier about a very stressful day that we had as a family, and it was a hours long of intense stress. And I hadn't really eaten. I ate breakfast, but like this is going on all day. I hadn't really eaten anything. I checked my blood sugar and it was really high. And I thought, this is really weird because it's not food driven. And then I remembered something that you said in class about cortisol also driving blood sugar. And so it was like, oh, well, this makes perfect sense now. This is a cortisol dump. And that's what's driving the blood sugar. So again, while chocolate would make my mouth happy and all of that, that's not what I need. What I need is some protein right now. And so we were able to manage that a little bit better just by getting some protein in me so that we could sustain the need for that cortisol. It was doing what it was supposed to be doing, but I needed to get a handle on the blood sugar portion of it.
Yeah, I remember that day. And I was so glad that you were kind of learning how to support your body and give it what it needed rather than
and
undermining it.
I've used that a lot over the last, since we started working with you during the class, is really being mindful about what does my body need right now, and not just what I think I want. I ate poorly for so many years that I think I conditioned myself to think, oh, happy mouth, happy body. And no, that's not the case. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to have an unhappy mouth. and eat like really weird things that would be weird for me that other people eat all the time, but that's not me.
Like kale.
Like kale.
Yeah.
We don't need to eat kale.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Great. Well, Bob in our April group was our, I think if we were giving awards in our April group, Bob got most improved. And he was, I think everybody, whenever we got on a call, because in our groups, we actually share this data. People get on. I said, who wants to share their data? Who wants to get some feedback on it? We were all like, let's look at Bob's data. That's what everybody was interested in, is how's Bob doing? So Bob, do you want to tell us a little bit about where you were before you started this?
Well, like Ruth said, I had a surgery just after Christmas for a knee replacement. And when I went into surgery, my blood sugar was over 7.
your A1C.
A1C.
A1C was over 7.
Which I'd noticed that it had been going up lately. And I wasn't happy with that. I was trying to figure out things to do to make that better, because I know it's not healthy for me. And the class came along, and Ruth
Manipulated you into taking
talked me into it. And I'm very happy that I took the class. I was also very happy that Medicare is paying for my sensors.
Medicare is paying for
Zero
your sensors.
Out of pocket.
That's really interesting, because you're currently not, you weren't taking insulin, were you?
No.
You're not taking, and so I think that's important. So for people listening to this who are on Medicare and have type 2 diabetes, that Medicare will cover this even if you're not using insulin.
Yep.
Did your doctor have to go to bat for you? Was that pretty straightforward?
No, it was no problem at all.
Okay.
In fact, it was a substitute doctor but I went through 3 different people at the clinic to get the prescription written. But other than that, it's just short email conversations, and they approved it and sent out prescription for 90 days.
Great. Because I should say that most people in these, well, some people who do this have type 2 diabetes, and some people don't. And some people get insurance to cover it, but most people don't. And that kind of works because the cash pay for this is about $90, $75 to $90 for the month of our program, because these little sensors last 2 weeks and they're about $45. I'm chomping at the bit to look at your data, to show people your data. Can we do that now?
Yep.
Let me just click the right button. So like I showed you guys before, this is a full 24 hours of continuous glucose monitor data. And this gray bar is that Goldilocks zone that we're trying to stay within. We don't want to bounce above, or we don't want to go below. And when Bob first saw his data, you can see here that, overnight he had, a couple of hours at the top of the range, but otherwise he wasn't even coming down into the range. And how were you feeling about this when you first saw your data, Bob?
Kind of stressed. Even though you'd said that, normal for someone with type 2 diabetes goes up to 180, I was still not happy with being outside the Goldilocks range. Yeah, not only outside the Goldilocks range, but you generally weren't even coming down into it. Right.
And you can see that this is, the first week. And in the first week of our course, we're monitoring. And I think we usually say, the first 2 weeks of the course, we're learning, kind of really learning getting a foundation in what is carbohydrate metabolism, how does blood sugar work, kind of just getting a primer on carbohydrate metabolism. And then we start learning the hacks. But the first 2 weeks, we're trying to test, what am I doing right now? Because we want to know what you don't have to change. Like, you could be doing perfectly reasonable things. So you had a couple of weeks of, the data right up in the 200s every day. And then it started to come down.
Yep.
And you can see whole swaths of time in the middle of the day when you were within the Goldilocks zone.
Yep.
So what were some of the things that you were changing that made a difference for you?
Well, using your suggestion, I was testing foods to see how they affected me.
Mm-hmm.
Like on one of those, you'll see the scone test.
Oh, that's right. Because you're a baker. You're a good cook.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's the scone test right here. Coffee and scone.
Yep. So, what I was looking at after doing that is how much of my diet was carbohydrates. Bread for sandwiches,
Mm-hmm.
toast in the morning, scones in the morning, dinner rolls, whatever.
Mm-hmm. There's a pizza, there's a hot dog on a bun.
Yep. And notice that whenever I had bread, I had a spike.
Mm-hmm.
So I started cutting bread out. Very disappointed that I'm cutting scones out because they're good Irish scones.
Mm-hmm.
So I will occasionally, at some point, put them back in. But
I'm looking forward to seeing that, because this is your data just after 2 weeks. This is the end of 2 weeks here, and at the end of 2 weeks, just with the tweaks you're talking about, you were in range all night long, which is we talk about that being our first goal, is being in range all night long.
Yeah.
You're almost bottom feeding, and you're coming up with a meal, but you're right here. You were just like right at the top of the range all day. So I'll come back. I'm going to go to a little bit later on. How hard was it for you to actually get rid of the bread?
Not that difficult once I made the decision to do that.
Mm-hmm. Did you replace it with something else?
I started having more eggs in the morning. Eggs and cheese, eggs and sausage,
Mm-hmm.
eggs and bacon. So it's not like I'm depriving myself.
Right. Good.
And one of my favorite foods is Italian sausage with peppers and onions.
Mm-hmm.
Used to
That's a
have
pretty
it
lunch.
on a Kaiser roll.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd make the leftovers into sandwiches on Kaiser rolls and stick them in the fridge for lunches the next day or two. But with the Kaiser roll, it would have put me up over 200. Mm-hmm. Without the Kaiser roll, I'm staying in range.
Great.
And that's in the gray range.
Yeah. So this is Bob's data at the end of our program. This is at week 4. So this is 3.5 weeks after he started doing this. And he's 100% in range. This red sometimes these sensors on the first couple of days and the last couple of days can can sometimes show you a little low at night, but this isn't a critical low. But yeah, you stayed 100% in range. And if I saw this on, like if someone came to me and I said, okay, well, let's look and see if blood sugar is an issue for you. And if I saw this, I would think, oh, you're doing pretty well. I wouldn't think type 2 diabetes.
So the side benefit of cutting out all those carbs is I've lost 29 pounds.
Okay.
And I don't feel like I've deprived myself of any food.
That's great. What's that? April, May, June. So that's just under 3 months for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Have you gone in for follow-up labs?
That's the funny part. I went in for follow-up labs, and because they said it was time, I got in there, and they said, no, it's not due until September. But I'd also had set up an appointment with my doctor for a different issue. And while we were there, we reviewed this, and I showed him the Libra view. And he said, this is great. We don't need to do this. We'll check it again in September. And we've talked a little bit about, at that point, taking me off some meds.
Great.
But if you could pull up my, what is that first report? The one that shows the estimated A1C?
From the beginning or from the end?
From now.
From now. Okay. You got to wait a minute because I got to change the end report date. While I'm doing this, how were you able to share your data with your doctor pretty easily?
I brought it up on my phone, went into the website and brought it up on the phone. He says he's familiar with that. And that's what he based his decision on, not poking me.
Okay. All right, I can share this now.
So it's been interesting, Karen, when we've been asked, because when we're at the pool, people can see our button that, our monitor.
Yeah.
And so they've asked, what is that? Blah, blah, blah. And, to help them understand interstitial versus serum. And that, if you were to get a reading off my monitor and do a finger prick, the numbers are not going to be identical. That what we're watching is the trend.
Yeah.
And that the trend is going to be the same as the serum trend.
Yeah.
And so
I'm so glad you brought that up, because we saw, we have to bring that up every group. Some people are also testing their, using a glucometer, using blood glucose, and there's some discrepancies, and they each have their benefits and drawbacks. But the benefit of this, of course, is you can follow trends in real time. And that it's okay if it's not exact, as long as you're not using it to dose like insulin.
Right.
And you would always, all the instructions on here, no matter who you are, you always confirm with a finger prick before you dose insulin. But we generally don't. So anybody watching, we're not teaching people how to dose insulin.
The cool part of this is I could eat something, and within an hour, I would know what it did to my blood sugar.
Yeah.
So I could do a scone test. I could do a sandwich test. I could do a wine test.
The other piece that was really good about that is you could do the test, but not have to check the data for hours.
Right.
So if I was out doing something and I ate something, and then I come back and I scan, it'll tell me what it was over the course of that time. And I could be like, oh yeah, I had an iced latte when I was with so-and-so at that time. That's what that spike is,
Right.
as opposed to just like, oh, I should have tested right after. I should have done a finger stick right after, so I could tell what that was.
Right.
So,
Right. Because the sensor that's on the arm or the chest or wherever you have it, it will store 8 hours of data for us. So it's fun to scan, all the time. And you do. When we first start using this, we're just like, oh, what's that? What is it now? But after a while, you can get on with your day, and at the end of the day, have a heart to heart with your blood sugar and say, oh, let's pick up the data and see what happened today. And you get to be both the scientist and the subject, and be a little dispassionate about, okay, well, how do things go? So Bob, you asked me to bring up the A1C estimate.
Yeah.
And so it's the 6 here, right?
Yep.
Is
6.
So based on so this is an estimate based on what your glucose levels have been through this. They estimate that you're going to show up as a 6, and you were hitting a 7 before this?
Over a 7.
Over a 7. All right.
And it's been down to 5.6.
Oh, really? That's
the estimate.
The estimate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been as high as 8 before this.
Before this. That's great. And that's not unusual when I talk to other people, even if they don't take, I think it's important to say, even if people aren't taking this class and this program, just watching it helps you decide, because the whole point is to make, you guys the experts in yourself. And this gives you all the control and all the information, so that you're using your healthcare providers as sort of touch points and coaches, and a little bit of, okay, what about this? Thank you. Okay, I can manage that from here.
That was a conversation that I had with my provider in January, because my cholesterol was higher than she would like. And she was like, well, we should probably start you on a statin because you have a family history of cholesterol that's not controlled by diet. And I said, oh, we're going to take this class, and I really want to see what that does. And it really, my cholesterol numbers didn't change. Actually, they got worse. And I don't know what that's about. I was just thrilled about my triglycerides. And so I asked her, can we ride another 3 months out just to see if like the dietary changes that we're practicing can catch up.
Right.
And so yes, so in May, June, July, in August we'll test again to see if I can forego the statin. I just would prefer not to put more things in me.
Yeah. But familial hypercholesterolemia, that's a little bit of a different beast. But still, even if you do take a medication for that, you're taking care of all the things on your side of the street.
Right. And we've talked about some of the other places that I can support myself if I do take a statin, that there are things that I can add that will help stabilize some of that.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've noticed with mine, with these changes that I've made in diet, is that when I hit a peak, I'm now recovering quicker. So I get a sharper peak rather than an up and slowly coming back down.
You don't get the plateau, the mesa all day. But that, we talk about that, good blood sugar begets good blood sugar. So that makes me think your metabolism is healing, getting better at energy partitioning. That's great.
So I loved the science that you presented in the class, not just the here, eat this or try this, but the why.
Right.
Was super fascinating to me.
Was there a particular why that worked well for you, that you're a bit of information that helped your brain get wrapped around all this?
No, I really think probably the biggest thing was the protein first
Mhm.
piece, and what protein does in your gut in terms of speed.
Mhm.
That's probably been the biggest fast way for me to think about something. If when I would have high blood sugar or low blood sugar, I didn't get that super shaky feel. I've noticed also that I'm less brain foggy now that I'm a little bit more blood sugar stable.
Mhm.
That seems to be one of the benefits for me.
Now, I asked Bob, but what about you, Ruth? Did you have any trouble getting your sensors, your CGM equipment?
So I sent an email to my provider through my chart,
Mhm.
and when I went to pick up my prescription, I had sent them the information that you gave us to give to them. And when I went to pick it up, it was the finger stick.
The
And it was like,
glucometer.
oh, yeah, no, this isn't it. So then I just sent them a message back and said, no, please see attached. This is the information that you need. And then I got 12 weeks for like $66.
You got 3 months of sensors, so 6 sensors for $66.
Yeah.
Your insurance covered it.
Yes.
Okay.
So we had been talking to our youngest son, and he was like, "That's great, Mom. I'm really excited that you're doing that, but gosh, isn't that expensive?" And I said, "Well, it came out to like less than $6 a week for me."
Mhm.
And he was like, "Oh, wow."
Yeah.
So, we have some family members that struggle, and I would love for them to just poke one of these on just to see,
Yeah. Yeah.
what where they could make some changes that they probably would feel better.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Because most people just need to use it for 1 to 3 months. So it's
mhm.
not something you need to use long term. Even literature says that, use it for a month or 2. It helps you recalibrate and find out what works, and then you just carry on with that information.
And I got a refill.
Okay.
Same,
So
and
did I.
another 6 weeks at the same price.
All right.
And I don't have any
No, you don't.
blood sugar screaming numbers where they would go, "Oh, yes, she really needs to
Yeah.
get a handle on this."
That's great. Now, did you have to buy at a different place, Bob? Did you have to go through Durable Medical Goods?
No,
Oh, okay. Because sometimes when you go through Medicare, you go through Durable Medical Goods.
they
All
just
right.
sent the prescription over to our regular pharmacy,
Okay.
just Fred Meyer.
Hmm. Yeah, because we do talk about some pharmacies are more expensive than others. So, yeah, and that's not unusual because we do send prescription codes to the providers so they know what to prescribe. But you know how a lot of their electronic their management systems are drop down menus, and it's easy to just click the wrong thing. So,
Right.
yeah, we try to make it easy for them because they're time pressed. Well, I am so glad I hadn't heard the final word on this from you guys. So I'm just thrilled to hear how things are going for you. Are you still wearing them? Then you're going to carry on using them?
Yeah, it's there someplace.
There.
Yay!
Yeah, for a while. I mean, it is kind of fun. We go to
Mhm.
get into bed at night, and we kind of we ask each other, "Did you scan?" Because we want to do it the last thing in the
Mhm.
night before we go to bed. And then if I get up to use the restroom in the night, then I'll scan again
Mhm.
because I'm a longer than 8 hours sleeper.
Right. Oh, that's right.
I like my bed and I like my rest, and so I scan again in the night.
Mhm.
So
All right. Yeah, because sometimes it can be some people err on the side of a little obsessive and it's not good for them. And I always recommend, just do this for a while and then let it go. But some people really like to have it. It's like a little coach on your arm?
Well, my doctor said the more you scan, the more data we have,
All right.
which I didn't quite agree with because it'll save up to 8 hours.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and you know
Okay.
that you can actually get your doctor. Your doctor can get an account on LibreView, and you can share exactly this data.
So Bob lost 29 pounds,
Mhm.
and I'm down almost 15.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that, again, that was just really just adding some of the hacks that we've talked about, really trying to just be intentional about getting some sort of exercise in every day ish.
and having steaks instead of hamburgers.
Okay. Passing on the buns. Yeah.
Because you don't use buns with steaks.
No, you don't. I don't use buns with hamburgers. I make hamburgers all the time without buns because you got to buy buns.
Well,
Well,
hamburger
I'm
without
just.
a bun is called meatloaf.
It is. It is. I think you're right. Well, I'm thrilled that you guys joined me and shared this. And I hope that, I think each of you have such a, such an interesting and inspiring story that I think a lot of people could make a lot of people really hopeful that it's not going to be such a, it's not going to be such a sacrifice to improve their health and reverse or prevent some chronic disease. Yeah.
Well,
Is
we
there
were happy to
anything?
do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me on this. I really appreciate it, you guys.
You're welcome.
And if I should post on here that we have, when this is being recorded, we've got another Hack Your Blood Sugar program coming up. This starts July 11th, and there's still the buy one get one offer is still going on until Sunday, so in 2 more days. So you can find out about that. Let me put this on here. There it is. So there's a link if you want to go find that and join this program. But feel free. I've got some openings both today and tomorrow, Saturday, for free calls. If anybody has any questions about it and wants to know more, I'd love to talk to you about that. But you can sign up later. But just like Ruth did, I find that almost everybody's in a situation where someone wants to sign up, but then there's someone else they would really like to drag along with them, either because they think they'd benefit or because it's always more fun to do it with the support and camaraderie of your partner or your best friend. All right.
Or a little competition.
Or a little competition. All right. Thank you so much, Ruth.
You're welcome.